You know, like with hypnosis, and certainly with all the hypnosis training, you kind of jump in and you do these things. You follow these steps. And, you know, for me, it was more about taking apart every single induction, every single process, and saying, what's underneath this? How is this working?
Hi there, this is James Tripp. This is a video for Hypnosis Without Trance coming out on James Tripp Chaos Wave on YouTube. Now, I hope you saw the video I put out on Wednesday, which was Melissa Tiers demoing the reverse spin. Not just demoing the reverse spin, but demoing the exquisite layering of conversational hypnosis woven into the mix, anchoring, using humor, evoking states, a lot of wonderful stuff going on. I hope you got the opportunity to see that. If you didn't, I'll put a link to the video so you can check that out. Now in this video, as I promised, I wanted to share with you some bits from an interview. I didn't conduct this interview, somebody else did, but I've clipped out some pieces where Melissa is talking about her approach to coaching the unconscious mind. Now with coaching the unconscious mind, the aim here is to get the kind of powerful shifts you can get with deep hypnosis, but without doing the deep hypnosis. Also, one of the things about coaching the unconscious mind, which is really important, is it gives you a framework and the flexibility to be able to go where the client needs instead of imposing rigid patterns on. This is an incredibly important thing for being able to do change work well. So I don't think there's much I really need to say on this. I'll hand you over to Melissa. This is an audio only, so if you want to, put it on headphones and kind of wander around or download it somehow, that's fantastic too. And I hope you get a lot from it. And if you have any questions coming up from this, head down to the comments section, ask them. If they're questions for me, I'll respond. If they're questions for Melissa, I'll point Melissa in this direction and get her to answer. I don't think there's much else to say other than if you like this video, make sure you like it at some point. If you're into hypnosis, if you're into NLP, if you're into the power of the mind, shaping your life with the power of the mind, hit the subscription button and make sure you hit the little bell, the alerts thing, whatever they call it now, notifications, that's what they call it. It's an important thing in this day and age on YouTube if you want to see the videos. Okay, let me hand you over now to Melissa Tiers, who's going to unpack some of her thinking around coaching the unconscious mind.
Teaching coaching the unconscious mind, formally, I guess, a course called that, for about 5 years. And it changes every time because I'm always incorporating new ideas because I'm always learning and getting rid of certain things that, we tweak these things. I train a lot of therapists and psychiatrists, and so I adapt things to fit their needs. And so I've taken, the challenge of taking some of the more formal hypnotic techniques and making them more conversational. The reason I can actually do this and do it justice in 2 days is because I'm always challenging myself as a trainer, right? As someone who can take certain ideas, make them practical, make them hands-on, and then build a course around these basic ideas so that there's a structure to change. And once you kind of learn this, and one of the ways that I do that is by explaining what my friend John Overdurf has brilliantly made explicit, which is the meta pattern of change. And that's a 4-step process that seems to be underneath almost every change process, right? Every hypnotic technique, every NLP pattern has underneath this 4-step sequence. And that 4-step sequence, once you understand it, then you'll realize that there's a million ways to utilize it. And I just teach a few that also happen to map across to the 4 steps needed for memory reconsolidation in the brain, the way of kind of activating the neural network of the problem and then doing a set of maneuvers that can really change the emotional track of an old memory. And so one of the things that I really like about all of this new stuff is, and I've said this before, I feel like I've just said this in some interview, but I think it's important for us in this field. There's too many, camps, it seems. And I've always been really good at being able to kind of play in every camp. I'm good at that. I just assume that if you're a hypnotist and someone who's supposed to be a specialist in communicating, that you'd be able to navigate through many different sides, right? So for me, understanding the meta pattern and understanding memory reconsolidation and the ways that we, can kind of turn on certain neuroplasticity is that I can see that what people are doing, let's say the people who believe that you have to do regression to cause, in order for change to happen, or the people that believe that you can use timeline therapy, or the people that believe that you just do kind of direct suggestion, classical hypnosis, or the people that believe you use metaphors. What I show my students is that underneath, if you really pare down what's happening under the hood, you'll see that when all of these things are done successfully, in other words, you get the change, you let go of the fear or the phobia, or, you get the change that the client comes in for, we're all doing the same thing. And so that we can come together on that and say there's many different ways to do this, provided you understand these basic 4 steps. So, coaching the unconscious mind is kind of understanding how change happens and then refining it and eliciting the unconscious anchors and triggers and biases and being able to shift the cognitive filters. That's the other thing that people don't realize. We don't make any single decision that doesn't have, underneath a lot of unconscious processing. Coaching the unconscious mind teaches people how to use your own beliefs and body and nonverbal communication to help directionalize the unconscious system of the client. So whether it's understanding how to downregulate the vagus nerve, which you can teach clients how to de-escalate from these stress states by knowing how to target the vagus nerve through maybe longer exhalations, or adding a few more words to each sentence if it's a fear of public speaking. There's certain things that immediately go to what Stephen Porges, who wrote a book called Polyvagal Theory, it's quite brilliant, what he calls neuroception. And it's the fact that we think of perception, right? But that's a real cognitive thing. That's a prefrontal thing, right? That's what we can perceive. But neuroception is what our nervous system is perceiving in any given moment. That is either downregulating, upregulating, or balancing the system. And we don't realize how much of our environment, how much tone of voice, tonality, the old idea of the old Hollywood hypnotist who speaks in a monotone voice, that actually triggers alarm in our nervous system. We need prosody. We need inflection and musicality. I was just playing with my dog, and we all speak to our dogs the way we speak to babies. It's a natural thing we do. Not only does it help release oxytocin, when we talk like this and we raise our voice, and they call it motherese. But that's actually a way of downregulating the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is, there's kind of 2 of them, but it really tells the evolution of our autonomic nervous system. And so that's part of the unconscious. To me, anything that is outside of our conscious awareness, yet has major play in our feelings, in our beliefs, in our behaviors, is well under the umbrella of hypnotic work. You know, I mean, what is hypnosis if not ways of influencing and changing the unconscious mind? So to me, it's never a separate thing. In the same way that when I learned NLP, to me, it's all hypnosis. There's no real separation. That's why my first book, which is, God, I guess it's like 12 years ago now, 10, 12, was called Integrative Hypnosis, because I always joke, you know, I needed an umbrella term that was going to allow me to change my mind all the time, to learn new things and integrate it in. And this way, integrative hypnosis, it's just wide open. You know, I can I can bring in something I learned tomorrow, and it'll fit nicely, you know. But to me, it's all the same. It's all, you know, what's useful for this particular client in any given moment. So, you know, Milton Erickson, one of my favorite quotes of his was, a therapist doesn't have the luxury of a theory, right? So as soon as you start to kind of get a little boxed in like that, then you start to filter each client through your own, you know, theory, your own ideas. You're missing out so much because your conscious mind is so limited. And it's really dependent on your beliefs that switch your filtering system, which allow information that's relevant to get in or not. And so coaching the unconscious mind is not only about how to coach your client's unconscious mind, but how to coach your own, so that you know how to how to modulate, how to shift your filters so that you're wide open to what you might not have noticed before. You know, the idea that we used to have about memory, you know, we used to say, oh, it's like a, you know, a video recorder, and you can rewind it in hypnosis and go back to the very first memory. You know, that's not actually how memory works, and one of the things that can be very disconcerting for people to hear is that, you know, every time you remember something, you're changing it. You know, it's an active synthetic process, right? So every time you recall something, it's as if you lift it out of the regions of the brain, the various regions where it's stored, and it becomes malleable again. Right? And so then you've got a reconsolidation window of about 5 to 6 hours where the memory then gets reconsolidated. Now, that's happening all the time, but it's typically in such a subtle way that we don't realize it, you know. But if anyone has siblings, I come from a family of 5, you'll know that if you talk about a particular day or holiday, that everyone will sound as if they were in a very different household by their memory of the situation. You know, I've had you know, situations where I'm like, no, that didn't even happen to you. That happened to me, you know. Anyway, with therapeutic memory reconsolidation, it's a bit more strategic, because for massive change to happen, right, see what we get is we get subtle little changes every time we remember something. There was a memory researcher that said the best way to preserve a memory is to never recall it, you know, because as soon as you do, you're going to change it a little bit. But for therapeutic memory reconsolidation, you need certain things to happen. And basically, you need to activate the memory, right? But to activate it, you really need to associate into it to light it up. You can't talk about it. That's the difference. People think that just by talking about it, they can do this. You actually have to kind of touch it a little bit. So you have to activate the neural network of the memory, lift it out of the brain, and then you've got to create a sequence of things that need to happen. You need to provide a mismatch, right? What they call in neuroscience a prediction error. And we do this in our work. Almost everybody who does successful change work has some ways of doing this. And a prediction error is, I believe when I step into this elevator, right? I'm going to have a fear response because I'm a claustrophobic. But then you create a situation with a client where you do some trance work, you do some NLP, some EFT. It doesn't matter because, as I said, underneath, if you're doing it correctly, you're probably doing it, right, whether you use any of these techniques. But if you create a change where they get into that elevator or even think about getting into the elevator, and if they used to feel, the fear and now no longer can, the brain updates it. The brain goes, something has shifted here. We need to update. Now, it's been doing that all along. It's how we've survived as a species. I always tell a similar story, but, I think it really makes it very clear. If you think about way back in cavewoman times, when we would go to, let's say, our favorite berry patch, and then one day we go to the berry patch. We know where it is. We have a memory of it. We go there all the time. It's the best place to get berries. And then we go there and we see that a group of saber-toothed tigers has decided to make it their home. What happens in that moment is a real prediction error, right? Because all of a sudden the brain it drops a flag. And it says, whoops, we need to update it. So now the memory of that area has now been changed from safe and yummy berry patch to stay the hell away from it, right?
Yes.
And so that's just what naturally happens as we evolve. So we in our sessions can make this happen so that the memory gets updated. Typically when I say things like that, people get a little nervous, right? Like the sunshine of the spotless mind or something. But it's not that you're conscious, your episodic, even semantic memory gets changed. You're going to remember that you used to have that fear. You're going to remember that you have that fear because you were stuck in the elevator for that time, but you won't have the emotional reaction. And if you no longer have an emotional response, it's just a memory, like any other memory. You know what I mean? And so
I do.
That's memory reconsolidation really in a nutshell. It's the thing that happens every time you remember something, but for real change to happen, and not just incremental change, but massive shift. I am phobic, now I am not. When that happens, like we see in our office, that's because we've done the necessary steps involved for that massive update. And so that's a big part of what we do. For me, I understood, the kind of Hebbian law, right? That neurons that fire together wire together. And so we understand that repetition works, right? Repetition. You are, kind of creating this synaptic, link. But what I didn't understand was what was happening in my sessions when people came in and in 45 minutes no longer had their phobia. Because that's not Hebbian law. That's not repetition. What the hell is going on? And so with memory reconsolidation, now we know. Now we know what's happening when you do a, regression to cause, or when you even use EFT in a strategic way, or an NLP pattern, or the fast phobia cure, or any of those techniques that we use.
So that was Melissa Tiers talking about coaching the unconscious mind. And if what she's talking about there resonates with you, if her style, if her approach resonates with you and you're in the UK, I'd like to invite you up to Edinburgh for the 7th and 8th of July. It's a 2-day training in coaching the unconscious mind. If you're watching this video and it's fresh out, this will be the launch week, so you can get a 25% discount if you move quickly on that. And there's nothing more to say. You already got a sense of things. It is going to be a fantastic training. Melissa Tiers is unquestionably one of the best in the world when it comes to facilitating change with hypnosis and NLP, which, like myself, she sees as highly integrated things. Okay, so that's all we need to say. Once again, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, hit notifications, do all of those good things, those wonderful things if you appreciate this. And once again, until we speak again, take incredibly good care of yourself.